Idaho has become the first U.S. state to enact a law protecting personal medical freedom. This means no longer will anyone in Idaho be denied access to employment, education, or businesses based on their health choices. Well, here to explain more is Leslie Manukian. She's president and founder of Health Freedom Defense Fund and one of the authors of the new law. Leslie, first, why was there a need for this legislation? What happened in Idaho that inspired you and others to push for a new law?
Well, I have been involved with the vaccine safety awareness movement for a very long time. But what happened, of course, in the last 5 years is the COVID responses. So the policies implemented that came down from the governor and the health departments that forced Idahoans to, stand on circles and operate behind plexiglass, and children who had to be plexiglassed and masked and be vaccinated. And a dear family friend of mine was actually paralyzed by a COVID shot that he didn't want because his employer coerced him into getting it. And he will sit in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And so this was the motivation for me to actually write this bill and then push for it.
Well, what specifically then does this law do?
Yeah, it ensures that almost no one in the state of Idaho can be excluded from normal life or coerced into taking any kind of a medical intervention against their will or their conscience. I say almost because there is a carve out for hospitals that take CMS funding, just because we had to do that there's a Supreme Court case from a couple of years ago that says that that they can actually force COVID shots. Now, what's happened is our bill says that they can only require standards that were deemed appropriate before 2020. So they can't add anything that happened in 2020 or anything new. It can only be anything that's a vocational or a historical, traditional vocational hazard or something like that.
Well, then I've got to ask, the country's currently experiencing a measles outbreak. So does this mean an unvaccinated child then could attend public schools that have traditionally required measles vaccines?
Well, first of all, the state of Idaho for decades has not required measles vaccines. They mandate them, but they have the broadest vaccine exemption in the nation. So vaccines are effectively voluntary in the state of Idaho. And you may not realize this, but more children have died from the measles vaccine in the last 20 years than from measles. And it's it's highly controversial. Now, roughly 12% of Idaho school children do not get that shot. And so this isn't changing any of that. And what it does do is say that children who are unvaccinated don't have to be excluded from school, which is a huge step forward for those of us who believe that our immune systems given to us by God are perfect. And as long as they're well nourished, it's extremely rare for a child to have an issue with measles. They recover quite easily from it as long as they're well nourished and have adequate vitamin A. And so this is really about putting the power back into the hands of the individual, where I think it belongs, because each and every one of us is a child of God, and it's up to us to decide what we're going to do with our bodies.
The governor vetoed an earlier version of this legislation, forcing it to be revised. So where does the accepted version fall short?
Yeah, let me just say that before the measles vaccine was ever introduced, there were a few hundred deaths from measles every year in a country of 150 or 60 million. It had died out, essentially, and the death rate from public health measures like getting clean drinking water, getting the sewage out of the streets and things like this. That was before the vaccine was ever introduced. So this idea that the vaccine saved us is just not accurate. With respect to the bill, the best bill, the bill that was signed by the governor was actually the best bill. The first bill he vetoed, claiming that he was concerned that sick children could not be sent home from school. The governor's office met with the original bill sponsor and convinced him somehow to exclude daycares from it. And I said I would not have anything to do with a bill that excluded daycares, that literally forced children or forced parents to vaccinate their children against their conscience in order to put them in daycare, into private daycares. And almost all daycares, I think all daycares in Idaho are private. And so the House introduced a competing bill, and it went back and forth until the very, very final day of the session. And then what happened was the governor signed the best bill that we could have hoped for, which said that healthy people cannot be excluded on the basis of their vaccination status from anywhere. And it also says that this code cannot be contradicted by any other code. So we have a fantastic bill that protects our most fundamental and basic God-given human rights. and also ensures that if someone is sick, that they can then be sent home. A business can send them home or something like this. It is truly revolutionary. I don't think it should be. I think it's common sense that each and every one of us should be responsible for our lives, and that only each and every one of us knows what's best for each of us, that no one else has to live with the consequences of our choices, and therefore no one else should be dictating them. But, it's kind of amazing that this is the first state to do it.
Okay, it's precedent setting. We'll see if other states follow the lead. Leslie Manukian, president of Health Freedom Defense Fund, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.